Servus and welcome to another episode of the Pro Hockey Pod, episode 47. This week we're on the road again, and I decided to bring on one of our veteran guys. Been around a long time, played over in North America as well, and I think it's always cool to hear, from a German guy who got experience in North America, especially in the NHL there. This guy's resume speaks for itself, as I said. Played in many top leagues, always been a competitor. Pretty funny guy too when he wants to be. Happy he's joining the podcast this week. Korbinian Holzer.
Hello, how are you?
Good man. I'm happy you're here because as I mentioned, like kind of your career, it's recently I think you've seen a few more Germans go over, but you were one of the original guys I would say that kind of went over there and slugged it out. But we'll get to that later. But you were born in Munich. What's kind of like your earliest childhood memory of like growing up?
Um, I'd say just like I was born in Munich, obviously, but I'm from a very, very small village, like where's like 1,500 people maybe. And just growing up there was very, very easy in a way of like you didn't have to worry about anything. You just like basically back in the days, like like you said, I'm more like an older guy. We didn't have any smartphones back then, so it was like coming home from school and you just went right outside, told your mom like I'll be back for supper or whatever it was. And you just went out and played, and those were like the memories that always kind of stuck with me. Like always hung out with my older brothers, two older brothers, and they always kind of took me under their wing, and we did a lot of fun stuff when I was a kid. And I always had the luxury of like playing soccer or like playing hockey with like older guys, and even playing baseball. Like I said, I went outside and played sports, and those were the memories I kind of cherish. And just growing up in that small town, small village atmosphere, really is something I'm looking back at, and I'm like, this was a fun time as a kid.
Hearing like Germans like play baseball at a young age is kind of rare. I was like normally it's obviously football or soccer as we say in Canada, but did your older brothers and did they play hockey as well?
They did, yeah. They both played not like professionally, but they went all the way up to like my hometown team back then was Garrett Street. They played like one or two games, I think, in the first team, but that was like third league or fourth league. And then they kind of figured that they probably wouldn't make it, so they kind of focused on like starting like a job, like a regular job. And yeah, they had a good time. They still sometimes play like kind of like beer league style, but yeah, they just enjoyed it when while playing. And for me as a kid, like obviously, funny story when I started was my one of my older brothers, actually the middle one, he was watching hockey on free TV back then. It was still on free TV. He was watching it and he told my mom like he wants to play that sport, and my mom was like, okay, like might as well grab all three of you and take you to the closest hockey team we have. So I was the youngest. I was 3 years old starting, and yeah, thankfully to my brother, he said he wants to play it, and I got lucky to start early.
Like in Germany, as you know, like the main sport is like football. And I'm always curious, like what kind of attracts a German guy to hockey. Obviously, you as kind of your brothers and your mom saying, okay, all three of you are going to play this sport. But was also like soccer kind of a thing you did in the summers, or was it?
It actually was, yeah. Like obviously in Germany, first thing you do when you basically pop out, you kick a ball, right? That's what everybody does in Germany, Like it was huge. Like I said, like you grab like a soccer ball, football after school, you hang out with your buddies. It's the easiest sport. Like you get so easy to like,
Mhm.
just play. It's basically like in Canada have all those outdoor rinks, like we have like soccer fields all over the map. Like even the small village I was in, we had two or three. We just go out on the field or whatever. It's all it takes is a field and a ball, and you can play. And so obviously it was huge, and I was actually not too bad in it. I went all the way till 15, 16, was like in the provincial national team, and then I had to make a decision, either stay with hockey or stay with soccer or football. And back then, I was just about to jump to the next level on football, which would have been like higher. I don't even know, like maybe almost under 16
Mhm.
national team stuff. And about to get to the under 16 national team in hockey. So for me, I just made the decision I want to play hockey because it was just more fun for me playing, and yeah, maybe a little better chance of making it with like so many kids playing football in Germany. So yeah, it turned out pretty good for me.
Well, it would have been a good way too, just thinking about it, like for you to kind of like stay in shape for kind of both sports because as you know very well, it's rare for there to be ice in Germany in the summer. So you would be, kicking a soccer ball around running and that would be good cardio exercise and stuff like that.
That's what I did. I actually every summer, like back then, we had when I was in Germany, my first few years, I in the second league in Regensburg, and then Dusseldorf in the first league, the 3 years. We always had those 8-month contracts back then. There was
Mhm.
12 months contracts like now. So you had to do something in the summer, like basically you were unemployed, I would say. And then I was always, as soon as the season was over, I would play with my hometown soccer team. And I would always like no practice, jump right into the games because the coach knew I was the best in shape. He put me center midfield, so I had to run the most. And it was just a fun way to hang around another sport and just different vibe. Obviously, a lot of running opens up the hips a little bit compared to hockey over the season,
Mhm.
right? So it was a good counter sport for me, staying in shape, different cardio. I was always so fucking sore after game one. It was insane. I was like, you play the whole year and then you play playoffs and you're like, man, I'm in the best shape ever. And you play one soccer game, a football game. I couldn't even sit down and take shit. Like it was that bad. Like sometimes it was so bad. And after obviously like after like, a few more games or like I don't know, a few more weeks of practice and everything. I still practice sometimes. My brother is coaching or like was coaching the hometown team there.
Mhm.
And sometimes if I have time, obviously now you have to be a little more aware with injuries and stuff, like injury, um, kind of making sure you're not getting injured. But sometimes I just like it as a good cardio, hang out with the boys and then have a beer after or something in the summer and it's good cardio and very good sweat.
Yeah, it's definitely a good activity to do. Kind of back to your hockey side though. So what was like your minor hockey path growing up? Like I know you played in Bad Tolls a bit. Like were you there the whole time? And also like how was it structured? Like obviously as you know in Canada that everyone plays hockey, so it's a different structure. And I'm just curious how it was for you growing up.
Yeah, like I said, like I started off in Geretsried. That's a small town, maybe 30 minutes away from Munich, like in maybe 20 minutes from Bartholz. I did my whole junior ranks pretty much there. I started like skating. I learned skating there, all the stick handling, had a like unbelievable junior like kids coach or whatever, your pee wee coach or whatever you want to call it, who basically taught me all the basics. He was tough, but he was like really, really good in like teaching the basics. Like I don't know how many circles I skated just to work on like skating stuff, like and we were always had the best team. Like back then when I was a kid, we had those skating competitions before the games. And it was like 2 or 3 exercises where we had like the whole team had to go, even the goalies. And it was kind of like a parkour, like you see in the Ulster game, like
Mhm.
agility or whatever you call that. I don't know. Just skating though, no puck. And we've won like every single one of them through the whole year. And it was like, I don't know, let's say 40 games. And before every game there were two. So we won every one. So we won like 80 skating competitions. And it was just like a fun way to do the skating and get better. And then by the time I was like what was it, 14, yeah, 13, 14, um all of a sudden like in summer training, one of the coaches we had back then, a different guy, he just didn't show up for summer training. We had the whole team like assembled for practice, summer practice, and all of a sudden there's no coach. And then the team manager came in. He's like, yeah, the coach quit. And we're like, what do you mean? Like, well, what are we gonna do now? And like, yeah, well, I don't know. Like, we'll hopefully get another coach, and you guys can play soccer now for an hour, and then you guys go home. And I go, well, what's for next practice?
Mhm.
Well, we don't know. So the coach pretty much left us, and it was like just right before we went on the ice. So we had that tournament with the Bavarian national team back then, and a couple guys and I from my team were leaving there, and then we had that tournament, and there was a couple guys from Bad Tolz there too, same age, and they were, hey, why didn't you guys come to us? Like we could use you, like we really need you, and it would be so much fun if you come to us. And we always had a good time with them when we were there. And back then, a buddy of mine and I decided, like, yeah, why not? Like, we don't have a coach, we don't know where it's going. And then in Batolz, they had the DNL team, the junior league team, just freshly started. And I was kind of like, for the future, something we were looking at. So my buddy and I, who were supposed, like, we were neighbors too, so it was kind of easy. Like, we came home from a tournament, and I told my parents, "Hey, I want to go to Batolz." And my mom was like, "What the fuck you talking about? Like, no, why? Like, I'm not gonna drive you back and forth." And then thankfully, my neighbor, my buddy, was saying the same thing to his parents, and then they figured it out. Okay, like, we can drive you, like, we can figure it out with the
Mhm.
they drive, we drive, whatever. And that was the move to Bad Tolz, and we went there for one practice. Said, yeah, perfect, you guys can come. And that was at under 15, I think, back then. And yeah, that's when I made the move to Bad Tolz. Played 1 year there. We almost won the championship that year. Like, we finished second, and then we moved up to the DNL team. Played there for 2 years. Had a great coach, Rick Boom, who's one of the best in the business in that age group, I think, for me especially. And the system he built there, like the whole stuff he built with that small market team in that league, was huge. I remember the 1 year we were second place, and we went the last two games to Mannheim and played a young Adler back then, and they were, like, everybody knows, I think they won, like, what, 21 championships in that league or by now. And back then they were just a juggernaut. They were beating everybody by double digits sometimes, and we were like second place and just 4 points out first, and we beat them both games and finished first. Like, we lost in the semifinals to Berlin because Berlin brought all their top guys from a DL down who played in the Oberliga and then played in the DNL.
Mhm.
So all those guys who won championships with Berlin later, we played them in the semifinals. But that was a good year, and that was fun. And then for my final year in the DNL, Botolz got bankrupt again, and they made an opportunity for younger guys um, to come up to play in the second league. They kind of managed to stay in the second league. I don't know how they did it, but they managed. You know how it is
Mhm.
sometimes in Germany. It's kind of weird, but so I got an opportunity to be 16 and 16, 17 and play in the second league. And I was Axel Kammerer, who's a coach there again now. And yeah, I I took full advantage of it. Got drafted after the year by the Leafs, and unfortunately we went down to the third league, but we lost the last game, and the fans, was a packed house and in Tolts, and the fans were cheering us on like we won the championship, and we just went down. So it
Mhm.
was kind of um, very, very sad in one moment, but on the other hand, it was a really good experience for me. And obviously, like I said, I was 16, 17, getting the chance to play pro hockey in the second league, and giving me a chance to get drafted was huge for me.
Obviously, getting drafted is a great achievement, and at this time too, probably rare for a lot of Germans. Like, so that obviously shows a testament to kind of how you were as a player and your work ethic, as you mentioned before. But I was curious, like, before even getting drafted, when you were kind of coming up through bad tolls there and then starting to play some pro games, had you ever thought about going in North America like a lot of guys do now, whether it's through the import draft in the CHL or college, or was it just back then it was like try to get to the DEL or to the highest level in Germany and see what happens?
I honestly never had any idea about junior hockey in Canada. All I knew was the NHL. Basically, I don't even know if I knew about the AHL, to be honest. Like,
Hmm.
you just had the back then. I had the player cards. It was really hard to access NHL hockey
Yeah.
back then, or even grab anything around North American hockey. So I had no idea about junior leagues. I had no idea about the AHL. All I knew was the NHL, and I basically just knew it because of those player cards, or like playing it on Sega Mega Drive or
Hmm.
Super Nintendo, whatever, or Nintendo 64 or whatever, or PlayStation. But that was it. Like, I had no idea, so I had no desire to think about going over there in junior, going over there for whatever reason. You play hockey on the streets, and obviously everybody picks their favorite player, and you're an NHL player back then, but you never even think about going over there. It's just like so far away. And obviously for me, and back then, especially my parents, it was huge for me to finish my school. And then after I did that, they told me, okay, like, obviously that was the year I got drafted too. They told me, okay, now you can try. Like, we trust you, and we want to give you that opportunity. And you finish your school, like, you have something in your hands if it
Yeah.
doesn't work out, obviously. But for me, it was just when I got the opportunity to play in Tolts in the second league, it was an opportunity, but I never really thought about where it could lead. I just thought this might be a good step into pro hockey, and um, like I said, I took advantage of the situation. I got a really good um, opportunity by the coaching staff there, and just the whole around circumstances, how it happened, and everything. I was fortunate enough to be in that moment at the right time, I guess. Um, but I never thought about going to juniors. And I know people asked me before that, like, would you do it the same way all over again or go to junior hockey? And I was like, I would do it the same way.
Yeah.
I played like when I was 16, 17, I played 30-year-old people, like guys, like experienced guys. I played man's hockey. And I think that really helped me mature my game maybe a little faster than just playing junior hockey. Obviously, there's some raw edges you can work out in junior hockey too, like off ice probably more. But when I came to the second league that year, I was, I think, 77 kilos and same height, like 190. And the coach told me before summer practice or like the summertime, he's like, you gotta bulk up, buddy. So I was like, okay. And I did like no functional training. It was all like old school, like bench press, like squats. Like we went to that old like gym with like that
Mm-hmm.
looked like the iron, like you can smell it and like
The
everything
metal
is,
weight.
yeah,
Mhm.
metal, like it's just like tough and like. But after the summer, I was like 87 or 86 kilos, and that really helped me, obviously, like with the frame I had, just to fill that out. And I don't know if I would have done the same in junior um, than I did playing like with pros.
Mhm. And how was it like for you making that adjustment, as you said, at such a young age? Like you're starting to play pro at 16, 17 years old in various levels. Like, was there a transition period for you, or did you feel that you kind of just learned pretty quickly how to adjust and ended up, kind of benefiting you? As you said, you ended up getting drafted. But that's always like,
Yeah.
I feel like for the younger, because there's a lot of young listeners for this
Yeah.
podcast, and I feel like that's always a common theme is how do you make these adjustments playing with older guys at younger ages?
Um, I think it's tough to really pinpoint one thing. Obviously, that team I played in, we had a lot of young guys. That kind of helped, and the older guys we had, they were all like super nice. Like they were
Mhm.
super helpful in the way they treated us as young guys, and we were like a big family. But that team we had, and I think always like in that town, such a small town and such a small market, that the imports that come in, they're really like embrace the challenge there and embrace living there. It's like really nice to be around the people, and the people around the team are super nice, and equipment guys and whatever you have. We had a really good culture, and that helped me as a young guy to get, like, I think, used to it a little faster, maybe because you felt a little more comfortable having other young guys around too.
Mhm.
So that helped. But overall, I think obviously it's up to you as a player when you come in to show the respect to the older guys, show respect to the game, um, and work. Like I was just sitting in my spot basically most of the year, and if nobody was saying a word to me, I didn't say anything. Basically, I was like, obviously the younger guys, we would talk and have some fun. We would have fun with the older guys too, but unless one of the older guys would come up to me and started talking, I didn't fucking really say much. So
Mhm.
I just did my business and tried to earn my respect in practice and through the games. And then I think the guys around me, the older guys especially, grabbed me, and then I remember that one scene, like Peter Gulda, who's a Czech guy. He was 39 by then, and that's when I found out that Toronto was watching me. Like we played in Essen, and we got back on the bus, and he sits right next, like behind me on the bus, and like I come on the bus, I grab my food, and he like tips me on the shoulder, and I'm like, "What's up?" And he's like sliding that card to me, like. And I look at it, and it's like Toronto Maple Leafs and scout name like Peter Inachuk, back then European scout, and I'm like, fuck is that? He's like, well, just let you know they're watching you. And that was like the first time I really like realized, so the NHL is like closer than, or maybe around you, so
Mhm.
now that you're here. And for him, just like I hit obviously like I was like stuttering, and then he started talking to me, hey, like don't worry about it. They're just watching. Like they want to give you that. Like he gave me that card because I knew him. He said like, hey, hand that on so he knows. Like maybe that motivates him a little bit, and he can't like he calmed me down and everything. So for me as a young guy, like I said, just coming in, earning my respect through like my behavior around the guys, just being respectful for the game, respectful for the guys, and going on the ice and work my balls off basically every day I could, and just earn my respect that way. And then people will help you, and obviously like you got to listen. Like if old guys who've been around, I was like a sponge. If guys would come up to me and tell me something or like try to help me out with like certain plays or whatever it was, I would just soak it up. Like I was like, okay, yeah, I'll try and like do
Mm-hmm.
this and that, just listen to the coaches. Obviously, you learn through your career, like what you can take and what it's not really beneficial maybe to your game, but like as a young guy, you just have to listen as much as possible, and then you'll figure out what helps you and like what benefits you for your game. But just going out and having fun obviously helps, and yeah, like I said, respect the game, embrace the challenge, and just having fun with the opportunity.
And how was it the day that you found out you got drafted? Like that must have been just like
Yeah,
a dream come true, but also like an amazing feeling because as you said, like up to that point to when Golda there on the bus taps you on the
yeah.
shoulder, like you really never had thought about like if it was realistic or not. Like you know what I mean?
I honestly had no, like I said before, I really had no idea, like even about the NHL draft. Like you don't really follow it. Like in that age, I had different stuff on my mind. Like obviously I had my school and like
Mm-hmm.
the NHL from certain things. But I watched Stanley Cup Finals. Yeah, I stay up late when the German guys like Uwe Krupp won the Stanley Cup. I watched the game, stuff like that. But like you never really think about it. That's something that could happen to you until that moment for me, basically. And then I knew there was something maybe bigger ahead if I work for it, obviously. And just finding out then with the draft, I had a meeting with Tampa Bay at one of the German national team tournaments, and I was talking to them, just like to one of their head scouts, and he gave me his card. And then there's those lists, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like all those rankings or whatever you call those. And at the end, I think right before the draft, I wasn't even on there anymore in the European side. So I didn't really think about anything. And I just followed the draft online, like not on TV. It was like just internet. And I refreshed the site like the first two rounds. I just watched that. And then after round two, it was like, I don't know, 2 o'clock in the morning or whatever it was. And I went to bed. And then the next morning, I just got up in the morning and checked the rest of the rounds. I didn't even look at names. I just like look at the last kind of thing where they were born, like so I can see the country. I wanted to see who's the first German drafted because there's other guys who like been pretty much highly touted and we're supposed to go like either second round, third round,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And so I go through first two rounds I saw. So I just started round three, no German. Round four, 111. I was like, oh, German guy, born in Munich. Who's that? And I look at my name and I was like, wait a minute. It took me like honestly like 2 or 3 minutes to realize what the hell was going on. And I looked at the team and it said Toronto Maple Leafs, and I was like, what the, I refreshed the side, did it again. Like I was sitting there for 5 minutes in disbelief, and then I ran downstairs to my mom who was just preparing breakfast that day, and I told her, I was like, Mom, I got drafted by the Leafs, and he's like, what the hell does that even mean? Like, what is that? Like, who are the Leafs? What does that mean? Like, no idea what the fuck I was talking about. So I tried to explain a little bit, and she's, oh, okay, like, oh, what's next? Like, what does that mean? I don't know. Like, and then maybe 10 minutes later, that scout called me that gave me the card. And he's like, hey, congratulations, welcome in the organization, blah, blah, blah. And then said, like, you're gonna get a call from the GM or like the team service guy or whatever. They want to invite you to their prospect camp next week, and it'd be nice if you could come and blah blah blah. And so I was like, okay, sounds great. Like I'm ready. So that was like June, right? So a couple minutes later, I got the call, and then they were like arranging everything, and then that was for me like that first moment. Like I hung up the phone, I was sitting down, I was like, holy fuck, this is happening. So next thing you know, I was sitting on the flight to Toronto and joining that prospect camp, and it was a blast, like unbelievable experience. Just so many things I've learned in that week. where I was like, even if that was it after, there was just so much that I
Hmm.
took home with me. And I was like, man, like this is awesome. Just sitting in that locker room, the Leafs locker room. And then we had like stuff about how to handle the media in Toronto. Stuff like I will never forget. I even have that little booklet we got still at home, where it has like step by step, like certain situations, how to talk to the media and how to kind of hear out what they're trying to do because they're always after you in Toronto,
Yep.
right? So um that was that was amazing and just an unbelievable week for me. And then that kind of started the whole process going until I went over.
Yeah, and I'm curious, like, you end up going, I believe, like the next 3 years or maybe a year later for 3 years, you end up going to Dusseldorf in the DEL before heading over. And I'm wondering, like, had they communicated with you, like, hey, we believe, if you can play in the highest league in Germany, like, this is good for your development. And then if you have success there, or like when we feel it's the right time, then we'll bring you over to North America.
Yeah, there was constant communication through my agent, obviously with me too, and with my parents. And it was just like my first year in Dusseldorf, and I said I played one more year in Regensburg in the second league. We had Leon Dreisaitl's dad as a coach, and they really wanted me there. And I had a great year there. Like it was another step for me in development. It was a top team in the second league back then. They wanted to move up to the first league. We didn't quite um, fulfill the expectations, but for me personally, I had a really good year there. Like I played power play. Like I took another step in my development. Took on a bigger role. I had some injury troubles with a couple concussions that year, but overall it was a good year. And then I took the next step to go to Dusseldorf. And when I came there, I thought, all right, like, hey, I was top four defenseman in the second league. I come to Dusseldorf, and back then they're like a top four team in the league that the Metro as a big sponsor, and they were semifinals, and like they're want to win the championship and stuff like that. Don Jackson was a coach, and I had the Förderlizenz for them. So like this license you can go up and down, right?
Mhm.
And I joined them after our playoffs. I joined them. They were in the semifinals, skated with them a couple of days, met Don Jackson, and I thought he's going to be the coach because Alex Solza was there. He went to North America over. Robert Dietrich was there, who went to North America after. Um, and he had a high reputation working with young defensemen and making them ready for that next step going over. So that was for me a big thing when I signed there. And then I had signed, and they couldn't get an agreement, and he left and went to Berlin, I think. So I was like, fuck, like that kind of sucks now. But they got another guy, like a Czech coach. And anyways, I came to the training camp and I was like, okay, like I'm fourth, like top four team in the second league. I'm gonna see how it goes. I can kind of a little bit cocky, maybe coming in expecting like, okay, I'm gonna play. I'm drafted. Like they basically have to
Mhm.
play me, like stuff like that. And I look at the sheet the first day, and I'm on the bottom of the sheet, like all the way down, and I'm like, holy fuck. What is this going to happen here? Like, what's going on here? So I was the seventh D probably, and there was no under 23 rule. There was nothing that guaranteed me any ice time. Um, I had to, I had probably sit with the fucking backup goalie for, I want to say like the first 12 games, and I didn't get one shift. Not one shift. I would do stats with the backup goalie, Jochen Reimer back then. He was sitting back there, and I was standing right next to him with my gear on the whole game. Didn't get a shift. Just practiced the whole time. Tried to work my way into the lineup, and then two guys got hurt in one game. And then it's basically the assistant coach Mike Schmidt, who's an unbelievable coach too, like who helped me a lot. Who was like looking around when those two guys went down. He's like looking. He's like, "Ah, damn, you're in," and pointing at me. I was like, all right, sitting there for like half a game, like absolutely freezing cold. Like, all right. As I was like nervous as fuck. So I came back to the bench. I sat down, and then I sat down beside Darren Van Imp, who's a veteran. He played in the NHL and everything. So he's been around, and he knew, like, I think you could sense that I was a little nervous, and he was my partner that game, the rest of the game. And he just looked at me, and he had that nose, like, I don't know, he got hit in the face or like slap shot or whatever. Like his nose was flat like a pancake. Like he's like, you could tell like he's been around. So he looks at me and he's like, "Hey, Holzy, just go out and have some fun, and I'll take care of the rest." And I was like, "All right." sounds good. And that was for me, that was like that moment where like, okay, let's take a breather and just go. And after that, I just played my way into the team. And when those guys came back, I was set as a top 60. And from that moment on, I got hurt one time at the under 20 World Championship at the B pool when we had that tournament. In the last game, I separated my shoulder, so I was out for 6 weeks and came back right back in the lineup, and we made it all the way to semifinals. And yeah, that was kind of like for me just working my way into the lineup by like again practicing hard, um, being a sponge in practice with talking to the guys and yeah, being a good team guy.
You end up playing with some interesting characters, I would say, on that team. Obviously one of them, our good buddy, Marion Bazzani. He always talked about how he kind of took you under his wing there, and he gave me some funny stories about you. There was one comment here I
I
need
think I
to.
know what's coming.
Do you think so?
I don't know, maybe.
Yeah. So fan question from Bazzani: are you still a fan of late night roses and candles?
I knew it. What was the second one? Late Night Roses and what?
Candles?
Oh, you want me to tell the story now or what?
No, like you can. I mean, you can if you want. I just thought it was funny because he explained it to me a little bit, and I was like, okay, that's pretty funny. But no, another guy you played with who I actually trained with, went to his house one time in LA, Jamie Storr.
Oh, Storzy.
And I'm curious. Like I've heard so many stories about him. There was one about him going up to Johnny Jackson or something in the shower. Like I just through multiple stories, I've heard stories, but
You know him though, or you just hear the stories of him?
no, I know him. Like I
Yeah.
used to train with
Yeah.
him and
Okay.
stuff. So, but he's a bit of a character.
Bit of a character. He's the absolute character. Like, you know how people talk about goalies are crazy or different? You just look at Jamie Storr and you're like, yeah, he's a goalie. Absolutely. Like, but he's one of the funniest persons I've ever probably played with. And he's like half Japanese, right? So
Yeah.
he can't drink beer. You know that? Have you ever seen him have a beer?
Yes.
It,
It doesn't
oh
go.
my God. He turns all red. He turns all red, and the stuff he pulls off when he does, it's hilarious. And like just him around, like obviously, like he's so funny, even in the net. Like when in the games, like sometimes he like there's a shot on net, and you would like box a guy out or something, and he would make an easy save, and he started like laughing. He's like, you know, like, oh, that was an easy save. Thanks, Holzy. I'm like, what's going on here? Like, he's such a good guy, and like it's great like skating with him like his goalie school when we went over to train there, and just him being around. Obviously, like when I was in Dusseldorf, first of all, he's an unbelievable goalie,
Mm.
one of the best in the league back then, and yeah, something really like another guy you can just talk to when you're like on that step to maybe making it over to North America, who can really give you some insight and like how it is and what you have to do and just like teaching you about being a pro
What not to do.
and what not to do probably. Yeah, no, but yeah, he's awesome, and I'm very thankful that I had an opportunity to play with a guy like that, and obviously other guys on that team who really helped me along getting ready for North America.
No, Storzy, when I was like growing up as a young goalie, he was like one of the older goalies at the goalie school. So it was him, Curtis Joseph, and then Rob Zepp.
Yeah.
And he would beat Zepp so much. And it was just so funny. And like Zepp's like a more like quiet, reserved
Yeah.
guy. And like Storzy would try to get him going. And then like I believe the one year they had a really famous playoff series and Zepp won.
Yeah.
So Zepp held that over his head
Yeah.
for a couple summers there. But after your 3 years there in Dusseldorf, like the last year you ended up putting up 22 points there and you ended up going to the Olympics there.
Yeah.
So how was that like I know you had done it on the World Junior level, but like, you know, representing your country in the Olympics, like that's obviously a tremendous feat and honor.
Yeah, it was amazing. Like that was probably one of my top three moments in my career playing that Olympic tournament. Obviously, it being in Canada, in Vancouver, best on best, you had all the NHL guys there. And I think I still believe to this day that that game in the final, the Canada US game, is probably the best hockey game to be ever played. Like I just recently saw it again, like the replay and everything. That was an unbelievable hockey game. Like back then, a small ice, obviously, I think that was one of the first times they played on a small ice, the Olympics. And for me, getting there, even, I didn't really think I was going there. I just played my first national team game, I think, like early in the year, early in the season in '09. And then I had a really good year. Harry Kreis was the coach, and I was playing power play. I was playing a lot of minutes. It was a great year for me personally. And when I found out that I'm going, I flew over to Vancouver with the team, and like when we had this first meeting, kind of like introducing us to the rules there and whatever, and like dress codes and stuff. Like there's a whole lot of stuff going on in the Olympics. Everybody had this little welcome package on their seat, or like you had to sit down where your name was, and I didn't have one. And then I was not supposed to go. Like they had everything set up for a different guy, and his name package was sitting there. And the team manager back then, I was like, "Hey, I don't, I don't find my name. I don't think I have a package here." He's like, he's obviously like starting to stumble. He's like, yeah, you can just sit here, just take his. That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. I was like, okay, like, so it's kind of weird because I knew that I think they didn't plan on bringing me, but I just kind of played my way onto the roster, and then like the games before I had good games, and I basically didn't leave them a choice to not bring me, and I was fortunate enough to go, and it was a blast. Like we played Canada even, and like we didn't have a good tournament. Like we weren't a really good team. We had that one NHL line like Marcus Sturm, Jochen
Hmm.
Hecht, Gauchi was on it, and Seidenberg and Ehrhoff, and then we had Grice and net. But they were like those dominant players, and like obviously if you have one line and you play best on best, it's tough. And I think we lost all the games, and then we played Canada in that play-in round. And I remember sitting in that food court, and we were like talking. I was like, "Man, like Canada, they had a tough time. Like I remember like Brodeur was starting, and he wasn't having a good tournament.
Yeah.
Then Luongo took over, but he was shaky, and they lost a game. And then they were like, oh man, like the pressure was like immense. Like I think like you could feel in the city and in the country, like if they didn't win that gold medal, any other gold medal, they didn't care. They only cared about that hockey gold medal. Like that's what it felt like. So the pressure was enormous. So we were sitting in that food court and we were talking, like joking, like, man, can you imagine we beat them and kicked them out of this tournament? They fucking kick us out of the country. They won't let us finish this tournament probably. But then they found their groove and they beat the piss out of us. I think we lost 8-2. But just going into that game, I remember I was sitting next to Alex Holzer on the bench when the game started, like the game, like the players came on and everything. And we sat down on the bench, and before the first face-off, the crowd started cheering. And I was sitting there and I had goosebumps. I was at Solti, like I was like, this is so loud here. And he's like, man, this is crazy, So we played that game and we lost 8-2, and then we were obviously out. But just the experience, like the whole vibe around is my first Olympics, obviously. But um it was an unbelievable experience. Like I said, top three and definitely in my career.
Yeah, it must have been crazy. And obviously that Olympics is very, as you mentioned, very famous for us Canadians, that game. Sid the Kid getting the game winner there. So after that, that's when it kind of your journey begins in North America. After that, you end up heading to that season, you head to North America. Like, how was the adjustment for you first heading over? Like, you start coming to Toronto, playing the AHL there. Like, how was the adjustment coming from the DL?
Yeah, it took me a while. I think the first few weeks when I was in training camp, I was always staying at the hotel, and it's kind of like like honeymoon phase, I would call it. Like everything's new, everything's like big city, like you're so excited to get going. Like I had a really, really strong training camp, and they were even considering keeping me up there to start the season. And then they're like, I think we should give him more time in the minors just to get like accustomed with the smaller
Mm.
ice and everything. So they sent me down really late, or like yeah, close to the start of the season. Called me up again for the last preseason game, and then sent me that back down again. And that's kind of like when you get sent down. Obviously, like you kind of expect it at first, but you never really want it to happen. But then when it happens, like you kind of down, obviously, and you get sent down to the AHL, and all this honeymoon stuff is gone. all of a sudden you have to find your own apartment, you have to get a car, you have to take care about stuff you didn't even think about. Like you finally have to live a life and play hockey on the side, and it's not just going to the rink, you're at the hotel. Like it's not this, like it's basically your life and
Mhm.
with playing hockey. So you had to find a way to get used to everything. Like, where do I go for groceries? Where do I do this? Where can I grab dinner? Like, blah blah blah. Obviously, the guys will help you. And there's another German guy who
I
went
was gonna
over.
say Marcel
Yeah,
Mueller was
Marcin
there,
Mueller
right?
was there
Yeah.
too. So we basically hung out a lot, and but I started off in the AHL. I started off really really bad. Like I was like the first few games. I think my first game I was a -3, and then I think the next game I was one game I remember I was -4, and Dallas Eakins was a coach back then, and he called me in for individual meetings like after the first few games, and I was like, damn, like man, like he's gonna rip me. Like this is not good enough. Like we're gonna send you back to Germany if you keep playing like that. I was like shitting my pants going into his office, and then we sat down, and I was probably there for what was it maybe 3 4 weeks 5 weeks in North America, and we sit down and he goes like, so how are you feeling? How's everything going? How are you getting used to everything? And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I didn't expect that question. Like, I thought you're gonna rip me here, like for my play on the ice. And he's like, no, like this is not about like I want to know. Like, I get it. That's it's tough. Like coming over from a different country into like this big market and like everything. He's like, you have that training camp, blah blah blah, this and that, different game, smaller ice. Like I just want to know like how you feel, like how you getting used to how's your girlfriend doing, like blah blah blah, like stuff like that. And that really really opened my eyes about like okay, like this is not all about hockey. Like I can actually like have some time. Like I obviously want to make it faster than it needs to be or as fast as possible, but um I can breathe and actually just focus on hockey. Like just go out and play and just find your groove. And then after that meeting, I think I finished the season, I don't know, +15 or +12. I don't know. Like we didn't make the playoffs that year, but I had a good year for me. I got better and better. I got my first NHL game in November, which was like just a couple of weeks later after the season started. So yeah, for me, after that, it turned everything around because it put stuff in perspective that nothing like is always about your performance. It's like how you feel, like what needs to be done that you can perform the best. And Dallas gave me that feeling, and from that on, I kind of took off then.
Yeah, I want to bring him up later because obviously you've played for him now. I think this is your third time
Yeah,
playing for him. But I will say this, like just knowing him from a short period here, like the way he thinks about hockey and like just like human beings in general, I think he sees it from a very unique view to kind of go with your comment of you've not been playing up to your best and you think you're gonna get ripped apart. And he's more asking like, hey, how's the adjustment? How you doing?
yeah,
Like, and that's, you know, those kind of coaches, I think, like understand that for you at that age, first time in North America, it obviously was more about like adjusting to the lifestyle, the pro life in North America versus, hey, why were you -7 on the weekend or
yeah,
whatever it was, you know? So, but no, he's we're gonna come back to him later, but the your second year, I believe in Toronto there, like you were up and down, but the Marlies that year, you guys went to the finals, right? Like
yeah,
that was the year you guys
yeah,
went against Norfolk.
yeah.
Um, talk about that playoff run because you know obviously you know in the AHL like it's a grueling schedule. It's not as luxurious as the NHL, but you guys end up having a really good season. I know Ben Scrivens was your goalie that year. He played pretty well, and you know there were also some guys on your team also who ended up being Leafs
Yeah.
later. But how was that run for you guys?
Yeah, it was awesome. Like we had a really, really strong team, and obviously like guys getting called up. I was up and down a little bit. I didn't play a game that year, which was for me personally was disappointing because I had a really, really strong season. I kind of molded into that shutdown defenseman with other guys, and like we had a really strong team. And if it wasn't for Norfolk that year, like they won 28 in a row, and I think
Mm-hmm.
they set a new record. And then they were just a juggernaut back then. Like most of those guys out of that team went on to Tampa and
Yeah.
helped them win Stanley Cup there. And we went all the way to the final, but like it was a great like great experience. Like for me, going that deep into the playoffs, playing until June, the first time in my career was obviously first of all special and different, but it was so much fun because the group was so tight and we just had a lot of fun. I still talk to Dallas about some stories of that year because we just had a tight group and no matter what happened, we just go and it was fun and guys would get rewarded with call ups after or like for the next year or like kind of set themselves up for the years after. And it was just tough to lose that final because I think, like I said, if it wasn't for Norfolk, any other team we probably beat. But they were just so deep and so good. And we went there for the first two games, lost the first two games. We had so many guys banged up, we had guys
Hmm.
injured, and obviously I'm sure they had some injured guys too who were playing through stuff like it always is in playoffs. And we just like we lost Matt Fratton, who was like the top scorer in the playoffs. That by the time he lost him in the conference finals, he was out, and that kind of hurt us. But in the end of the day, like we lost the first two games there, and then we came home for game three, and I think it went to double or triple overtime. I think it was double overtime, and it was 0-0 the whole game. Scrivby was playing unbelievable. And then Mike Koska, I will never forget that because Dallas, like the next year, Koska came to Toronto. I tell that after, but Mike Koska got the puck on a dump out from our zone and got the puck in the neutral zone, turned around, and their guys were going for a change, and he wanted to go for a change too. So he just grabbed the puck, got the red line, and took a slap shot into the boards. I kind of rimmed it, wanted to rim it around. Scribby came out of his net to stop the puck behind the net and hit the stanchion on the way in the corner, and it hit the stanchion and it bounced to the net and rolled like it. Instead of going wide, it kind of stood up and rolled in like this in an angle far post, and Scribby couldn't get back in time, and they won the game 1-0.
I was at that game.
You were there?
I was there because I had two Burlington guys. So Corey Conacher
Yeah,
from Burlington was
yeah,
playing, and then one of the guys who was like a black ace
yeah,
was there too. And I remember that. I was trying to remember how it ended because I thought it ended on like a weird goal or like a
yeah.
bad call.
Yeah, no, it was at off the stanchion on the rim. Like, and I think like obviously there was no real video review like there is now, but
No, no, no.
guys were saying there's a guy offside still from their team, but I don't know, who cares? But that would have been like if we win that game, it's 2-1
Yeah,
and we have another home game. We lost it. And I think back then the AHL was 2-3-2.
yeah, yeah.
So we had three home games. So we win that game, it's 2-1 with two more home games. So we could have turned that series around. We lost that game 1-0 in double overtime on a shitty goal, and we are down 3-0. And then next game, it was just that was a dagger for us. Like we couldn't recover. Obviously, you try everything game four, but they swept us and yeah, won the championship. I mean, they deserved it, but for us, it was tough because the way we lost that game, that
Hmm.
something negative I'll never forget.
Yeah, I remember being there too.
Yeah, but it's funny though. Like I said, like Mike Koska signed in Toronto next year, and Dallas was still a coach. And first practice we had the Marlies because there was a lockout year, so
Yeah,
we had all those guys
yeah.
down in with the
So you
Marlies.
so you stayed there for the lockout then? Like you
Yeah,
stayed?
yeah.
Okay, yeah,
I thought about going to Germany but I couldn't because I wasn't like with the waivers. There's so many rules like
yeah.
with waivers I couldn't go over and like so I was fine staying there because we had like a sick team again, loaded, absolutely loaded team. And then we started first practice. Dallas grabbed Mike Koska right before practice. He's like, "Hey, we went to Rico Coliseum." And he's like, "Here, grab that puck, rim that puck. I want to see if you can do that again, you fucker." Obviously, he couldn't do it, but it was just funny story.
That's pretty funny. Um, Another thing I want to talk to you about, like you obviously being a German guy playing in the AHL, I thought it was pretty unique that you were able to wear a letter too. That's I'd say that's a tremendous honor being a guy like obviously like English isn't your first
Yeah.
language and you're coming over here. Like, did you feel that was a tremendous honor at that age? Like, you're probably in your mid 20s there. As I said, been over only a couple of years and already you're wearing a letter.
Yeah, it's obviously huge for me personally and huge honor to represent the team as an assistant captain. And I took a lot of pride in wearing that letter. For me personally, it's never about having that letter because I'm just me.
Hmm.
Like I don't change, and it doesn't matter if I have a letter or if I don't have a letter. I try to be the best human being or be as best player I can be, no matter the circumstances. And But obviously, saying that it's a huge honor. Like it shows trust from the coaching staff. It shows trust from your teammates. It gives you that extra motivation, maybe, especially in the minors, that you're in a role that is a leadership role and you want to fulfill that, and obviously be the best leader you can be, and help the team win some hockey games, and also help guys that are new. Like in my situation, for me, it was like there's other guys coming over from Europe, not especially from Germany, but like from Europe, and I've been there for 2 or 3 years now, and just being that maybe that guy who can help them, who's been there, who can help them talk through stuff if they, like I said, what Dallas said to me, like, how are you feeling? How is their transition going? Same thing as me as a player. Like if guys come over from Europe and it's their first year, and you could feel them like, they're quiet, or they're just like, I don't know if they're really comfortable. Like just my role is like, okay, make them comfortable too, because I've
Mhm.
been there and I know how they feel. So yeah, it was an honor. It was special for me, obviously, and yeah, I think it helped me grow as a person, as a player too.
No, 100%. I had a fan question too, kind of about your time in Toronto. Like you obviously played a good amount of games for the Maple Leafs there. My favorite team. So you know, hopefully they can figure it out one of these days. But I think you were there, first of all, you were there during was it Berkey and Nonis were the GMs when you were there?
When I got drafted, it was John Ferguson Jr.
Yeah.
and then Berkey took over and Nonis, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then my last year before I got traded was uh Kyle Dubas. He was already there, but I think he was he the head was he I don't know if he was a GM yet, or was it just assistant GM.
No, it would have been Lou Lamoriello because Dubas was assistant under
Yeah,
him, but he was the
but
Marley guy.
yeah, Dubas was with the Marlies,
Yeah.
and who was the GM with the Leafs? Was it still Berkey? Like Lou wasn't there when I was there.
Okay.
Must have been Berkey then, I think. Who came after Berkey? Was it Lou?
No, Berkey was Nonis.
Well, then it was Nonis, yeah. Then okay, Dubas came in though as a GM for the Marlies then.
Okay.
Okay, so he's there because I know I talked to him because there was like a couple of instances where it's like kind of disagreeing with some stuff, and I talked to him a couple times on the phone, I remember, and we had some talks. And yeah, Nonis, yeah, because Nonis told me I was traded. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, you're right.
I was gonna say though, you were definitely a like a Berkey player.
Yeah.
Like just
Yeah.
like I didn't know if he had drafted
Yeah.
you, but I like thought of it right away. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
this makes sense why he was in the
Yeah.
organization. Like,
Yeah. No, I got in that sense, somebody else drafted me, but with Berkey coming in, that definitely helped my case,
yeah,
I think. And it kind of maybe changed my role a little bit because I think like, yeah, I am a Berkey type player, but I also like when I was playing in Germany, I had like good offensive roles sometimes too. Like I play on the power play and stuff like that. And when I came over to North America, I got more developed into like a shutdown, hard nosed defenseman, like
hmm
defensive defenseman. And obviously that has changed again now, where there's no real stay at home guy anymore. It's more like everybody's part of the game or part of the attack now. So that has changed again, and you don't really have those stay at home guys anymore. But for me, like I love Berkey. He's like um, always protective of the players. Like he obviously demands a lot, but he's hard, he's fair, and I have nothing but good words about Berkey, to be honest.
he's one guy I would love to meet one day. I've read his book probably 6 times
Yeah,
over. Like the stories, how he is, as you said, like
yeah,
protects his players, sees it a certain way, and the way he builds his teams is kind of how
yeah.
I see that too. But a fan wrote in and kind of wanted to ask about your time with the Leafs there. You obviously had some characters on that roster, guys like Phil Kessel, Lupo was there. Obviously, Phaneuf and Kessel on the 24/7 are priceless, just going back at each other. Kadri was a young guy back
Yeah.
then. Like, how was it being around like those guys in the locker room every day?
It was fun for sure. Like Loops was a great guy to be around. He's a true professional, and I think it really sucked for him with all the injuries he had
Yeah,
because I remember every time he played, he was unbelievable. Like, he's so good, like scoring goals, and then he would get hurt again. He'd come back and he would like right
yeah.
back into it, and then he got hurt again. Like he really suffered from that. Phil, like you said, everybody's seen the 24/7. Phil and Dion going at it, and And I tell you, there's every morning. It was hilarious. These two, like we had the ping pong table in the middle of the room, and these guys were going at it. And I tell you, it was like the whole team was watching because it was just so much fun. Not even the game was intense. Like they're both good, like really good ping pong players. Anything Phil touches, like he's a freak of nature. Like anything he touches, he's good at. But just seeing them play and how competitive they were and how they like tripped each other is hilarious. Like you'd get your warm up in, and then they would say like, "Oh, we're playing they hate Dion," like how Phil talks and everything, and like Dion would come right back, and like everybody gets their warm ups in, and then we would just watch, and it was like the best. Like those guys were sweating, like it was like yelling, cheering going on. It was a fun time. Obviously like we weren't as good as we would like to be, but it was a good group. It was fun to be around every time I got called up. It was fun being up there. Obviously, the Leafs, the way they treat the players and everything is top notch. Doesn't matter. Like the equipment guys were
Hmm.
unbelievable. Like everything was just top notch, and yeah, it was a good experience, and very thankful that I was able, like, was given the opportunity to play some games for them.
And then with like you end up getting traded there to Anaheim, like did you kind of have an idea that was going to happen? Like, was it kind of looking for maybe there's a funny story because you started laughing? I don't know.
Yeah.
But another question I had, which I don't know if this affected this or not, like obviously in Toronto, Randy Carlyle was there at one point,
Yeah.
and then he ended up being in Anaheim
Yeah.
when you were there. So I wondered if there was a connection there. Maybe there was, maybe there wasn't. But I guess you can explain the story of what happened.
Um, well, my first few years there was Ron Wilson,
Yeah.
the coach, and I can tell one story first. We were on a road trip with the Marlies for 3 weeks. Like back then, we had those grueling, like long AHL road
Yeah.
trips where we would like go on the West Coast and or like in the middle, like I don't know, it was forever, like Chicago, Milwaukee, Peoria, like
Yeah. You
all
guys
the
had the weirdest division.
yeah, like it was wild. We were gone for 3 weeks straight and come back for one home game, finish off in a 3-3, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, play Friday in Grand Rapids, Saturday in Rochester, and Sunday at home against Hamilton. And is wild. So we just came back from that trip, had that home game. I scored that game, and I was just like so excited because we had like a stretch of like 2 weeks of home games. So I was like, oh, finally back home and like just hang out a little bit. And they called me up right after the game, going on a West Coast trip to LA, Anaheim, and San Jose. So I was like pumped to get called up, but I was like, damn, I'm right back on the road, right? So we got on a road trip, and then I think we played a game in I can't remember San Jose, and I think one of the D got hurt, so I thought I might play, and I skated the next day. They called a guy up from the Marlies who came to like fly to the West Coast, but I was like, like we played Anaheim, I think a 2 o'clock game or whatever. So I was like, okay, I'm probably gonna play. Like the assistant coach was like saying like, yeah, be ready to play. And goalie coach, I skated with Frankie Allaire. You might know the
Hmm.
famous name, right? I had a lot of time with him because that year I didn't play much. Or every time I got called up, I never played, but I always did the goalie drills with him, and he was awesome. Like I loved him, and he was really respectful with me, and like he really liked me being around. Um, so I was ready to play, and then I came down for um the morning, like breakfast or brunch or whatever. Nobody would say a word to me, and I was like, man, I don't know what's going on. They called this guy up, and like, but he should be the seven now. Like I should, like, obviously I'm here for the whole week. Like I should slide in, right? So I thought, I was like, what's going on? Nobody's saying that. We had the meetings, like nobody said a thing. And I got up and grabbed some lunch, sat down, and then Dave Nonis called me over, who's the assistant GM back then. Berkey wasn't there, and Ron Wilson was on the table too. And I walked over, and I thought they were gonna say, "Hey, just enjoy, like man, like it's gonna be a good opportunity." Blah blah blah. You know what he's saying? And they look at me and say, "Hey, like we're gonna send you back down, but we just don't know if you're gonna come fly back home with us, or you have to fly like commercial back." And I was like, "What?" And then Ron Wilson looked at me. He's like, yeah, you know what? Like you played really well with the Marlies, and we wanted to reward you for your play down there, but we called you up for that, but we didn't plan on playing you anyways. And I was like, excuse me? Like, why the fuck am I here right now? I was like, that was the first time I was really, really like disappointed by that whole system and
Hmm.
politics over there, obviously. And yeah, that was kind of like negative experience, but like my trade. We were on the road, and I think we played in Washington, and then we went to Tampa or Florida after, played those 2 games after. But Monday was the deadline. Played Sunday in Washington. Monday was the deadline day. We had a day off, and Ovechkin crushed me the day before. I had a little bit of a conky, so I had treatment, and I talked to my agent a couple weeks before, and he said like, yeah, there's nothing really imminent, and if they not trade you, they want to re-sign you. And I was playing like top 4 minutes, and I was feeling really good. I played with Jake Gardner and played like around 20 minutes every night. It was good for me, good opportunity and like good time. Finally got my footing. Obviously, we sucked that year. I think we're like one of the worst teams in the league. But for me personally, it was good playing and like good playing time. So I didn't expect anything until that trade deadline day, and it was like 3 o'clock Eastern time. So I laid down, I don't know, around 3 or like 2:15 to take a quick nap, and then woke up at like, I don't know, 3:15, and my girlfriend calls me, and it's already like, by then it was like already like 3:45, 4, so an hour past the deadline. And I was like, that's odd. Like we never really talk or maybe text, but like
Mm.
if, unless something weird's happening, like we don't really call. Like there's no FaceTime back then. It was just like regular call. So I was like, yeah. And she said, hey, I'm watching that trade deadline center here on TSN, and you just got traded. I was like, what? What do you mean I got traded? Like, yeah, it just came in the ticker down here. It said your name and you got traded, but I couldn't see the team you're going to because it was so fast that I couldn't see the logo. And I was like, no chance. Have you looked at the clock? It's like an hour after. Like, I haven't heard anything. That's impossible. And he said, yeah, like next time it shows up, I send you a picture. I was like, okay, send me a picture. Like I hung up. I was like confused as fuck. And then like literally like a minute later, I get a phone call from random Canadian number, and the guy like straight up didn't say who he was, whatever. He's like, "Hey man, it's a great trade for you," and I'm like, "Who are you? Like, where am I going?" And he's, "Oh, that's awesome. We put you right on air." So there's a TSN trade center.
Oh my
The
God.
guy from the like background or whatever, from the studio, he said, "Yeah, we're gonna put you right live. That's awesome. Like, great trade for you." And I'm like, I don't know. Like, what's going on? And they put me right on the show. And from that moment on, I have no idea what I said. I absolutely blacked out. I like the guy said, like, I remember that's the last thing he said. He's like, hey, like, Korbinian, that's a great trade for you. You're going from one of the worst teams in the league to the best team. Like Anaheim at that moment was number one in the whole league. Anaheim. And that's when I found out who I got traded to. And after that moment, I was like absolute blackout. I probably said like my girlfriend told me after, you just said like, yeah, I'm thankful for the opportunity I had in Toronto. Looking forward, obviously, it's a good chance for me to have like playoff games and like maybe win a Stanley Cup, and like, you know what you say when you like have
Yeah.
no idea what to say, but like try to be nice or whatever. And I hung up, and 10 minutes later, Dave Nonis calls me and he said, hey, man, like, I'm sorry you had to find out that way, but we had to wait till the trade call was going through with the league and everything. So we couldn't tell you. And my agent didn't tell me anything. So I had no clue. And 5 minutes later, Anaheim calls and they're like, hey, so great to have you. When can you come? And I was like, well, I'm on the East Coast right now. We're here for a week road trip. I packed like one suit, two
Mm.
shirts, like just enough underwear and socks or whatever. I guess I don't know. Tell me. And they told me, okay, now it's too late for a flight to the West Coast, but you can come tomorrow. I'm like, all right, I'll fly tomorrow. And from that moment, I've never been back to Toronto. Like my girlfriend had to clean up the apartment, like sent me some clothes. I had this little suitcase with my suit there, my two shirts and a couple boxes. She sent me them, and we just had a newborn too. Like she was premature, and so she was in the hospital for a little bit. She just got out, so it was like it was crazy, man. Like the trade, the first time getting traded was is always like tough, obviously, but the way it happened, it was wild. And
Yeah.
I just came to Anaheim and went through medicals there, and yeah, all of a sudden I was part of that team.
That's a crazy story. It must have been cool though, as you said, like you went from the Leafs were not very good that year to going to a cup contender, and obviously Anaheim, the roster was pretty stacked with guys like Getzlaf, Perry. I believe Bieksa was there, Kessler. A little change in weather too.
Yeah.
Going from cold Toronto to
Yeah.
sunny and hot Anaheim. It's kind of funny. Like I don't want to like skip ahead too much because obviously you played in that system, played with Anaheim and also San Diego, which I believe kind of brought me to step or time two with Dallas there.
Yeah.
Um, but speaking of just kind of you brought it up, speaking of funny trade stories, um, you end up getting traded eventually from Anaheim to Nashville. And I believe there was a someone we brought up before on the podcast that was here for this, and I just want to hear your story about it, like how it happened. Obviously, our buddy Marion Bazzani was, I believe, visiting you out in Anaheim when this trade happened.
Yeah, it was funny. My brothers were there like for a week or 10 days, and then basically their last 2 days, I think he came in a day or a day before, so they kind of like overlapped a little bit. But my brothers were leaving trade deadline day, and he was there for I think another week or so, like 5 days, something like that. That's what he had planned. And Dallas was the coach in Anaheim back then, and same thing. I was playing. I liked it. Like obviously, I really felt comfortable in Anaheim. I've been there for 5 years back then. It's a good organization. I loved living there. Everything was great, and same thing. My agent didn't have an idea. He's like, obviously, like I knew the second time around. Like if you're a free agent at the end of the year, you're in danger, especially if you're on
Mm-hmm.
a team that's underperforming. You always know you're in danger. Um, but I didn't expect it this time again. I was like, not basically, I was not hoping it for it to happen. So, anyways, Baz was there and my brothers were there, and they were like, "Hey, like before we leave, we want to get a couple more jerseys from you for like people back home. They asked for it." So I was like, "All right, we can go to the store. It's day off again." So we drive to the store, and I go to the cashier, like the guy there that works at the team store, and I'm like, so we need two Holzer jerseys. I think one home, one away, whatever it was, or three. I can't remember. He's all right, yeah, perfect. Blah blah blah. We gave him the jerseys. He started printing the jersey, and it was already again, I don't know, 10 minutes, 15 minutes after the deadline time, and my phone rings while we're at the store. I look at my phone and it says Bob Murray, who's the GM by Anaheim back then, by for Anaheim. And I was like, oh no. I knew. I knew right away. And I would look at Boz and I said, like, I'm getting traded. He said, what? Hey, I got to answer this. So I answered, yeah. Hey, Holzy, just so you know, I just traded you to Nashville. I got to do my job, blah, blah, blah. Thanks for everything. And I was like, yeah, thanks, I guess. Like, crazy. And by the time I'm on the phone, the guy in the background on the machine who's printing the jerseys stops printing. Because obviously, like, when you get traded, it's not just you getting traded, it's all your marketing rights.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's getting traded, right? So you're not team Anaheim anymore, you team Nashville or team whatever you're going to. So everything that your name, like all the rights they have for your name, gone, traded. So the guy stopped immediately when he found out that I was traded too. Like stopped. He put the press up. He was like, I don't know if I can finish this. I got to talk to my supervisor. I hung up the phone and like Nashville called me 10 minutes later. Like, yeah, when same thing. When can you come? Like, we got a flight from LAX at 7, and it was 4 o'clock at that time. And anybody who knows California or LA traffic from Anaheim to LAX is usually like if you have no traffic, it's 45, 40 minutes. But you have traffic, you can maybe go like an hour and a half, maybe
Mm-hmm.
two if you get unlucky. So I was like, there's no way, no chance I can make that. Zero. I have to go home. I have to pack up all my stuff, everything, my whole house. I was lucky cleaning lady was there, so the house was clean. But I had to get. I told him that's no chance I can make. Okay, there's another one at 9. All right, I can or 8. I can make that maybe. So I had maybe 3 hours, 4 hours to pack everything. Anyways, before we went home, the guy goes like, I gotta ask my supervisor if he can finish these jerseys or if he can sell them. And I was like, yeah, sure, that's fine. And then he went back, came back. He's like, okay, so what we can do is like you guys can have the jerseys, or we can just throw them out. Like if you don't want them anymore, like obviously, like we get
Mm-hmm.
it. Like you don't have to pay for them. Like we just take them out and that's it. My brother's saying, no, no, we want these. These are the last Anaheim jerseys from you. So we're going to take these home. So he finished printing them and they took them home. I went home. I packed up all my stuff. I had this sick really sick Halloween costume that Chewbacca. I bought it for like $300 or whatever it was. It was. I have a Instagram on my Instagram page. I have a picture of it. It's unbelievable. Like not maybe not the best picture, best costume to wear in California for Halloween because it's absolutely steaming and hot.
Yeah.
But I had that and I couldn't fit it anywhere. I bought two more bags at like Dick's Sporting Goods and just to bring out all my stuff. I had like 8 bags and I couldn't fit it anywhere. So the cleaning lady was still there. I was like, "Hey, you want this?" And she's like, "Oh my God, yeah, my son would love this. Like, I want to take it." I was like, "How much you want?" I was just take it. I can't fit it anywhere. Just take it. So yeah, my brothers left. They went to the airport and Boz and I, like I had that car from BMW. Um, and Bozzy stayed in my house for a couple more days before he left too. So it was kind of weird. I felt so bad. We tried to make it work. Like we talked about on the phone, like, hey, maybe you can fly to Nashville and we hang out here so we can at least like have a
Hmm.
purpose for you coming here. Like and but the flights were so expensive and it didn't really make sense with the travel schedule for him. So we're just like it sucks, but at least you can enjoy some sun in California. And then he went home. But yeah, kind of another crazy trade story for sure.
You've had some funny ones, or crazy ones, I should say, good or bad. But there's one thing I wanted to ask you about. Like, obviously, I believe you played 10 years over in North America, and just kind of a testament to you. Like, you battled for those 10 years and never gave up. Like, you mentioned like multiple times being whether it was called up just to be called up and then sent down a day later, or kind of doing that call up grind that a lot of athletes go through. Like, played 200 AHL games, 297 AHL games. Pretty impressive for a guy from Germany. Like, did you ever like think about that or look back on that and like there's kind of like gives you like some self-gratitude being like, I battled through this and that made me kind of who I am today?
Um, yeah, I think so. That for me, the most important thing always was, especially when I came over, when I first signed my first contract, I signed with the Leafs. It was a 2 year deal. And I remember like it was yesterday, I said like just see how it goes. I'll
Hmm.
probably after those 2 years I come back. Probably. Who knows? But I didn't expect to be there for 10 years. Like and I kind of worked my way from deal to deal. It was like I never had more than 2 year deal. Most of the times it's just 1 year deals. But looking back, just working through all the adversity at times and just battling through stuff. And like I said, for me, the biggest thing was when I left after my last year in Nashville. I was like, I think I can look in the mirror, looking back, and just be like, okay, I gave everything I had, and I tried as much as I can to make my dream work, and stuck with it through like bad times to good times, and yeah, I left everything out there, and in the end of the day it worked out for a good chunk amount of games in the NHL and a good chunk amount in the AHL. And I had every second I had there, I cherish. Doesn't matter if good or bad. Like for me, that formed me, like shaped me as a person, shaped me as a professional, shaped me as a player, helped me develop the way I developed in that way. And I don't regret anything. Like obviously, there's things you maybe would have done differently, or maybe a little more different style or whatever. But I have no regrets, and that was my biggest thing when I left, going back to Europe or then to Russia. Um, that I was looking back, that I was like, okay, like this is it. Like
Hmm.
I left everything out there. I tried as hard as I can, and I had a great time. Like I'm not saying I failed. I played over 200 games, and it's funny because you never really think about it because you're in that moment all the time until somebody else from the outside tells you, like, you know what you accomplished. Like, you think about where you're coming from. Like, you're coming from a village of 1,500 people from a country that hockey is not really the biggest sport ever. Like, Canada isn't like anything. Hockey is like a kind of like a outside sport. Not like everything is about football, right? So you're coming from a village of 1,500 people for a sport that not really anybody knows in your country, to make it to the best league in the world, where like 1% of all hockey players make it. So hearing that, that kind of puts everything in perspective, where you go like, well, you got to look back, and while you're still playing, obviously it's you always thrive for your best, right? But
Mhm.
now that I'm getting closer to the end of my career, looking back, thinking about stuff like that and hearing that from other people makes you look back and you're like, oh, well, yeah, there's someone you can be proud of, right? So like I said, I can look in the mirror, and I'm very grateful and very humbled by the opportunities I got over my career in that regard. And like I said, I think for me personally, which gives me a little bit of satisfaction, is I left everything out there, and I left or made the most out of my opportunities I got, and control the things I could control, and yeah, lived a good life in North America, and had a lot of fun, and made a lot of good friends, and a lot of good experiences, and yeah, it was definitely fun being over there for so long.
No, you raised so many good points there. It obviously is a tremendous accomplishment, and for you to kind of, realize that and kind of have that gratification or satisfaction being like, hey, I did this, I left everything out there, because that is something I feel in athletes is kind of forgotten sometimes. Like they focus on the bad versus the, like you said, you played almost 500 pro games in North America, which is a great feat. Like lots of people would kill to do that. Um, so that's a testament to you, man. Honestly, it's really impressive. I'm happy we got to do this today. Three more questions for you. Like your career, man. There's so many things to talk about. Like as you mentioned, you went to Russia, you played with Datsuk. Another Peter Holland, yeah, was there.
Yeah.
Um, from obviously the Toronto days. Holly's a big golfer,
Yeah.
from what I know. But we're gonna skip over that part. But one thing I wanted to kind of ask you about, we brought up before with Dallas, is you've played for him on three different occasions. Like, how have you seen kind of maybe him change over the years or adapt in terms of like whether it's his coaching style or like just kind of him as a person? Because obviously playing for somebody three different times over a 10-year span, not everyone's going to be the same.
I think it hasn't changed so much to the last time I had him in Anaheim. He's basically very similar to then, maybe a notch more laid back in certain areas, but that was pretty similar, and that's not too long ago when he was in Anaheim.
Mm-hmm.
I will say though, like my first time in Toronto, like that was 2010 I went over, 2010, 2011. Yeah, it was my first year. So that's 14 years ago almost. Um, he has changed a little bit. He has not in the way of coaching, or like the way he treats his players and the way he cares about his players and stuff like that, but more about how he handles certain situations. And I have to tell him this because I realize now, like I remember, I don't know you remember when he came in and you heard them talk about refs and stuff like that, that he really was like motherfucking refs back in the days, and he was big time, and he
Mm-hmm.
really like shut it down a little bit. But I can tell now, and I'm telling him, he's getting more and more frustrated with the refereeing here in Germany. I can tell because he's getting louder and he's getting a little more intense on the bench. And I've always sit there when he starts yelling at the linesman for not dropping the puck or whatever. And like, it's like really like not as much as it was in Anaheim because he was really quiet then. But it was like in Toronto, he would like in the Marlies, it was unbelievable. Like, it was so much fun. And like, just the way, like he even had a way, he would even say that, he would admit that he, like, obviously he has his captains he wants to talk to the coaches, to the refs, and the rest of the bench better shut up. That's what it's like he was saying.
Yeah.
And he knew every ref, like the linesman, like obviously, like in the minors, like you basically, when in the Rico Coliseum, we basically always had the same two linesmen
Yeah.
most of the times, and then we had two different refs sometimes, where you have like Terry Korhaski or like those guys, the old school guys, and he knew exactly, like to a T, and he would say that how to handle certain guys. He knew, like if he had a ref, he would motherfuck during the game, he would get the next call for him, like our way. And then he knew like certain guys he had to sugarcoat, and then we would get the next call. But if he would turn it around and motherfuck guys, he couldn't motherfuck. They would like they would destroy us. they would have like we would go 3, 4 PKs in a row, like just taking penalties. Just 50-50 calls would always go against us.
Mm-hmm.
But he had that certain way where he knew how to handle guys, but he was like he was into them and the rest. And that has changed a little, but it's coming back. So I have to tell him this. I always forget that he's getting a little, I can tell he's getting a little frustrated with the refereeing sometimes in Germany. But his coaching style in Toronto was, I think he's more, I don't want to say matured, but obviously he was a younger coach back then in Toronto, and he learned more quiet, but he's always been detailed.
Mm-hmm.
He's always been about that and about the standards and everything. He's always been a guy who takes a lot of pride in how he lives his life and how he expects his players to go after their business and stuff like that. The high standard he's always talking about, and he's always lived that by example. And the way he treats his staff was the same in Toronto. Like he would have great connection with the physios, great connection with the strength coach. He would people have him around, and it was always a great culture in the room. So he's really same as that. He was a little more into maybe nutrition back then. Like everybody knows the story probably when he came to Edmonton, he took the donuts away in the media room and stuff
Yeah.
like that, and they took it the hard way. And now when you talk to him about it, he probably admits that that was the wrong thing to do. But that was him. Like, like he was always trying to make everything or make everybody around him better too, and like live to a higher standard. Not because he wanted to like piss you off or something, but he actually cares about people.
Yeah.
And I think like when you work with him, and I've known him for 15 years now or longer. I think he was my player development coach or player development department in Toronto when I was drafted. So he always saw me in Germany play and everything. And so we've known each other forever. And you can tell like he just cares, and when you talk to him about certain things, um, the mindset he has, and obviously he developed that over the years, but the way he coaches, the detail and the standard he wants into the habits and stuff like that, he's just not saying that. Like he lives that, and he expects or like wants you to live that same way in a way that we can all be successful, and that's
Mm-hmm.
what should be about in professional sports, I think so.
No, I agree with that. The way he goes about every day, truly cares about everybody. Like how he treats the staff and stuff has been really great for me. Obviously, someone, just meeting him this year and, he's been with us and with the players and stuff. As you mentioned, German reffing is frustrating at times. So it's gonna get him eventually, it gets the best of us. But no, it's cool to hear kind of how you've seen him either change or stay the same over the years in certain areas. Two more for you. This one's kind of a two-parter one, but obviously now you're going in your third year here in Mannheim. Have you thought about how long you want to play for? And have you also thought about eventually one day when the time comes to obviously retire, which it does come for all of us, have you thought about what you'd like to do after hockey?
Um, well, you kind of have to, I feel like. Obviously, for some people it comes a little quicker, some people comes a little slower. For me, I'm really enjoying to play still. I enjoy being around the guys in the room. That's a big thing for me, and it's still a lot of fun. But on the other hand, obviously, like I know that I'm turning 36 in 2 weeks, and I know that the end is near, to say it that way. But you think about stuff where what could be and like what could you do after. And for me, just being around hockey for what is it now? Professional hockey for almost 20 years now. Um, you kind of want to stay in the business, I think. th- what exactly it is, coaching, obviously, yeah, would be interesting. I think I like being around the people, like being around players, being around the room. Well, who knows? Might be that, or even like management stuff or player development stuff, maybe a scout, something like that, like something around hockey, because that's, I think, kind of like my bread and butter,
Mm,
something that I learned a lot, was able to learn a lot over the years. I've seen a lot of countries. I've seen a lot of different styles of hockey. I've experienced a lot of different players, different styles, that help me understand the game, understand the people. So it would be kind of stupid to go to bank and sit there from 9 to 5 and do something else. But who knows, man? Like right now, like I said, I love the game. I love being around the people. I love being on the ice, and as long as I have that, I'd like to play. And as obviously a healthy, I want to
Mhm.
say healthy. Like health is a big part, but I also understand that there's a time after, and you have to think about it. And I am, and I feel like for me, the closer I'm getting to that point, the more I get interest in stuff around the game too. Like what does it take daily basis? I don't know, like you see stuff differently in an organization. I was lucky enough to be in organizations like Toronto, which is like probably the best organization in all of hockey. Like it's a business. It's not just a hockey organization. It's a business like the MLSE.
Mhm.
And even there, even with the Marlies, like talking to the office people there, like I've always been interested in what's going on. When I got traded to Anaheim, what does it take in a market like this in California where it's like 20 degrees every day, like the sun is out? Nobody, like, who thinks about hockey in California, really? When I got traded there, so it's like, how does it work for them to get people to the game? How does it work for them to have the game in people's mind that there's hockey? How do you develop the game there?
Mhm.
So I was always interested in that and curious about things. So I've learned a lot in that regard, that I was always same thing, like I said earlier, like at the beginning, like as a young player, I was always kind of like that sponge who like was always asking questions, who was always like after people, like building connections with the media guys just to find out like how they work, working with the marketing, or like talking to merch guys, like just get in conversations, like get to know them, like find out what what makes them tick, like what does it do for them, like what's their job, like what can they do or what are they doing
Mhm.
to, and especially in California, to promote the game or to get people invested in the game. And Toronto is obviously easier because it's a no-brainer, but how does that work when everything's going your way in that regard? How do you sustain it and how do you even get better? That's something else that I always like was interested in, and talk to people and just like stuff like that. And there's a lot of things like when I was in Russia, same thing. Like, how does it work there? How is the culture here? Like, you always try to learn. You always try to not just go over your business, but actually like meet people, like with the people you work with. Try to get to know them. Like
Mhm.
they always share. Like they always like to share. Everybody likes to share a story. So it's always for me, like I said, learn from people. And if you're the smartest guy in the room, you're usually in the wrong room, right? So um, that's always been like stuff when I went through my career that I take with me, and wanted to learn from everybody around me and see what you can take and for you, and like maybe help you down the road for whatever you want to do after.
No, that's very true. I could definitely see you staying in hockey after. I don't see you sitting at a bank job. So
Uh,
don't worry about that. But that's good. That's cool that you thought about that because a lot of players, man, they just kind of focus on the playing, and then when it ends, they're kind of in like a phase where, okay, what do I do now? And like, I think it's smart, like guys like yourself, like you still want to keep playing, and I still think you have the ability to, but eventually it will end, and it's good to think about that life after hockey. But last one for you here because I know you gotta get going here.
Snack coming up.
Snack coming up. What is one piece of advice or multiple pieces of advice you would give the younger generation listening? So if you're speaking to some athletes out there that are 14, 15, 16 years old, like what are a couple pieces of advice you might give them?
I think I know this sounds cliche, but like have fun in what you're doing, right? Like it's especially now, like when you're older, or like when you're more into that pro time, like pro career, sometimes it can become more like a job in hockey. Like it's not like when you started playing where you just go out and just like you're out there for fun, like games, like obviously you want to win, but games were fun. Like now is like sometimes like it can get to a point where it's just like it's a job,
Mm-hmm.
and like you lose sometimes the focus or like the eye for like having fun. Like what is it all about? And the end of the day, like yeah, I get it. Winning is fun, but like just like enjoying the process of the whole thing is fun too. The journey to wherever you want to go, and just going out there, enjoying every moment you're out there. And you know, you never know. Like when you start playing, are you going to be a pro or not? Like you never know in that age. So just having fun with it and just yeah, go out and enjoy it and learn as much as you can. Don't be too hard on yourself. Most of the time, I've done that too. That you're just like critic, your biggest critic. But obviously, yeah, just have fun, go out and be yourself, and be willing to learn, respect the game. What I said earlier, and I think usually when you do that, the game will respect you back, and you kind of create your own path. Obviously, working hard is cliche too, but that's what it is. Like you got to go out and work. It always comes down to that. If you're the hardest worker in the room, it's a good start, I think. And in anything you do, it doesn't matter if it's sports or anything else. If you can do that and your work ethic is high and you enjoy the game, you usually have a good chance of improving every day, and that should be your goal. And then the rest of it it's just a journey you can enjoy and you should enjoy.
100% agree. Perfect way to end the podcast, man. I appreciate you doing this. Good advice there for the listeners, the young listeners out there. Obviously, hope to have a career like you did. You know, get those 500 games and North American Pro. I mean, you know, if there's any young European listeners out there too, like who's a better guy to kind of base themselves off than you? You've been through it all. Hope you enjoyed going through memory lane, even though sometimes we had to bring up the funny trade stories. But no, man, I appreciate you taking the time, kind of sharing your story there. And yeah, thanks for being on the podcast.
No, thank you. Appreciate it.
And for those listening, give this guy a follow on Instagram. Give us a follow on YouTube, all the Spotify streaming platforms, everything else, Apple Music. Until next week, cheers and ciao.